powerlifting versus bodybuilding. Every beginner lifter at some point is going to take a road between bodybuilding or powerlifting. You know, there's those few who go to CrossFit, but I'm not even going to talk about that because that's obviously the wrong choice. But this is a guide not just for newer lifters, but for anyone. It's some information that I wish I would have known earlier in my lifting career. I personally am a power lifter, but I've been lifting for around a little bit over 3 years. And even though I'm a power lifter, I'm going to try to make this as unbiased as possible. So I'm going to start out with the cons of bodybuilding and powerlifting because I think a lot more people already know the pros, and I think the cons are something that's pretty important to talk about. So con number one of bodybuilding, more than likely, just some tough love here. Most likely, you don't have the genetics to succeed in competitive bodybuilding. Dude, to be on a stage, amateur pro bodybuilding, and actually do good win, it takes elite genetics. Not just elite genetics, but also years upon years of work, right? You can enter a powerlifting meet, 6 months into your lifting career if you wish. You could. But bodybuilding, not even close. I mean, even the people with the best genetics, they're probably going to have to take like multiple years to build up a good general physique, and then they can go on stage and compete. But if you want to do competitive bodybuilding, it takes more than just hard work. It also takes a lot of luck, a lot of predetermined genetics, which a lot of people don't have. And I just want to clarify, because this might sound a little harsh, but even if you don't have the best bodybuilding genetics, you can still train and train and train for years and eventually step on stage and place well. But you are always going to be outplaced by the guys who got the good genetics, essentially. So you can still do good with not the greatest genetics, but to be the top of the top, unfortunately, you just have to have the best genetics. Like, for example, let's take Chris Bumstead, and let's take every single rep he's ever done, every single gram of protein he's ever ate, every single steroid he's ever taken, everything is the same, and you put all of that into some random person, completely random person. That other person's going to look completely entirely different from CBum. Now, they're still going to have a great physique and probably going to be able to maybe do well on amateur bodybuilding stage, maybe even pro bodybuilding stage, but they will not be Mr. Olympia because it just takes genetics and luck along with all of that intense dieting, intense training, and all that sort of stuff. And another con is actually stepping on stage as a natural is going to destroy your hormones, right? The average test is like on the low end 300, on the high end 900. If you compete bodybuilding naturally, your test can get as low as the single digits, which is super fucking unhealthy, can really fuck you up. And so as a natural, it's really hard for me to look someone in the eye and recommend that they step on a bodybuilding stage. And again, let me clarify, this isn't targeted towards people who have been like training for years and know they want to do bodybuilding. This is for the people who are like, I don't know, should I do maybe I can go in a bodybuilding show, maybe. I would fuck, if that's you, then listen to this. But I don't want to discourage the people who, bodybuilding is their passion, because bodybuilding is great for some people, but not everyone. And it's one of those things that you have to be fully on board and you have to fully know, yes, this is what I want to do. You can't be half in, half out with this. That's what I'm saying. Another con here is that for some people, the amount of effort required to compete just might not be worth it. And this might seem harsh, but this is a little bit of tough love for competitive bodybuilding here, right? And the actual diet to the show, like the 3 months before the show, you're going to be craving food all that time. And I love food, man. I want to be able to eat food and enjoy my life, right? I just can't really sit here and like be honest with you guys and say that I would recommend actually stepping on stage as a natural for the average person. Now, if this is something that like you really want to do and you know you want to do it, then of course, right? But if you're kind of like on the fence, it's like, yeah, I don't really know what I want to do, then I cannot recommend bodybuilding on a competitive level for you, right? But I will say, I can't even think of any cons of just training bodybuilding without the intent to compete. Training like a bodybuilder, eating like a bodybuilder, but having no intent to step on stage one day. But now let's go on to the cons of powerlifting. First off, as you get more advanced, the training gets more boring. Trust me, I've experienced this. I like to go to the gym like 6 days a week, but that doesn't really work as you get farther in powerlifting. So you have to be able to deal with kind of repetitive training. Yeah, typical powerlifters only train 4 days a week. You can do a little bit more, but four is what the usual does. And for me, that's just not enough, man. Like, I like to be at the gym. I want to be there at least 6 days a week. So training 4 days a week does kind of suck. And you will hit major plateaus and be very discouraged in powerlifting, right? One of the best parts of powerlifting is like the first few months when your strength is just increasing like crazy. But eventually, you're going to hit some plateaus, and they're not just going to be like, oh man, my bench has been stuck for a little bit over a month. No, dude, these are going to be long, long, long plateaus that you're going to have to intelligently train to get out of. And it can be really discouraging for some people. I've seen it. I've seen people hit these plateaus and be like, you know what? I just want to, maybe I'll just go train bodybuilding or I'll just do something else. And I can get it. It can be super discouraging trying to train every day, eat right every day, and then your bench just doesn't go up for 6 months. But that happens, and it's honestly not even that unusual. And another con with powerlifting is that programming is incredibly difficult, and the more you learn about it, it's very difficult. Sure, you can just go and use some program that you find online, but actually intelligent programming is pretty hard to do, and that's something I've been learning the hard way. And a lot of people just like to do this stuff on their own. They don't like to get a coach. So learning actual intelligent powerlifting programming on your own is going to be a very difficult thing to do. But the pros of bodybuilding. First off, you get to look badass, right? This is why people do bodybuilding, just to look good, look big, get that nice pump. That's the biggest pro. Also, super fun training. You can train very often if you want. I mean, you should probably have a rest day in there, but you could use 7 days a week if you wanted to. And there's a lot of variety of training, right? You don't have to stick to one thing, and powerlifting, it can be super repetitive, but bodybuilding, you can change it up, if you don't like lat pull downs, you can do rows, or you can just, all sorts of stuff. There's lots of information. Bodybuilding's been super popular online, so you're not going to be confused doing bodybuilding. You're going to know what you're doing, essentially. Now, the pros of powerlifting: you can get strong fast, especially if you're new. If you've never really done SBDs or compound lifts, I would super recommend that you start some sort of powerlifting training, whether that's just doing compounds at the beginning of your lifts. That's what I used to do. But it's super fun because your strength is going to increase like crazy, and it's a super fun period of time. But you got to keep in mind, it won't last forever, right? But it's a really fun part of powerlifting. Another thing, you can still succeed with a more quote unquote colorful diet. You don't have to just be eating chicken and rice, and you don't have to for bodybuilding either. But what I'm saying is, if you don't really care about how you look, you can be fat and still, be a great powerlifter. You can eat all sorts of candy. It's kind of like it's the meme about powerlifters just eating however they want, eating like absolute shit. It's kind of true. If you want to be the best of the best, then you have to have a good diet. But I mean, you can pretty much as long as you're eating protein, you can kind of get away with whatever you want at the beginning of your powerlifting career. Hitting a PR feels badass, dude. It's probably one of top 10 feeling, top 3, top 2 feelings of all time. Maybe best feeling of all time, dude. Hitting a PR, especially one that you've been working towards, it just feels awesome, man. It feels so good. It's fantastic, right? You need to try hitting new PRs. You need to set a standard and increase that standard, and it feels great. Then you look back like 3 years ago and you're like, there's no way that was my max. I can bench that now. That was my max squat. I'm benching that for reps now, That's something that's an amazing part of powerlifting. And another pro, I kind of already talked about this, but competing in powerlifting is a lot more individual and realistic than competing in bodybuilding. Now, if you wanted to, you could compete in powerlifting right now. You'd probably not do good if you've never done any powerlifting training, but you could. And you'd probably enjoy it, and it'll be a good experience, right? Bodybuilding takes, I'd say, if you're natural, like 5 years of bodybuilding training, then the prep, then that's how you can be competitive. But powerlifting, it's not really about getting first place in the meet or getting first place in your weight class. The majority of the time, there's not even going to be fucking someone in your weight class, right? It's just going to be you, honestly. So, in that sense, powerlifting is super individual, and you can just kind of go in, hit your list that you want to hit, and be happy about it. And I want to clarify the point that I mean about competitive bodybuilding versus competitive powerlifting. So let's take a few examples. Example number one, I go 9 for 9 in a meet. I hit all of my lifts. I do exactly what I want to do, but I get dead last. Okay, I hit everything I want to hit, but I get dead last. I don't care that I got last. Okay, and no powerlifter would. If you hit what you want to hit, you're happy. Unless you're like the elite of the elite elite, like competing at like one of the top powerlifting meets. But that's not us. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about people on like a local state level here. And the other situation, I go 4 for 9. I miss 5 of my lifts. A pretty shitty meet, but I get first place out of the meet. I don't care that I got first place out of the meet. Who cares? I did it. I had a shitty performance, so I don't care that I get first place in the meet. But let's take bodybuilding on the other hand. Let's say you have a great prep. You come in, you're feeling great. You're super lean. You have great tan, and you feel like you got carved up super well, and you go out there and you place, let's say you place fifth. All right, now let's take another scenario. You go out on bodybuilding, you're kind of feeling like shit. Your prep wasn't super good, you're a little bit bloated, just things, your tan isn't even that good, things are going super well, but somehow you still get first place. Maybe the competition's not there, you get first place. In my view, and you guys can tell me if you think I'm wrong, in my view, the bodybuilder is happier that he got first place, because when I think of going on a bodybuilding stage, I think the only reason I would ever go on a bodybuilding stage is to win. And I think this for a few reasons. Reason number one is that you don't need to be 6% body fat to look good, right? You can look good 15, 20% body fat. You can still look good and feel much better. The only point of going on to a bodybuilding stage is the competitive aspect, to compete against other people, I feel like. So essentially, if you do plan to compete in bodybuilding, just know what you're getting into, essentially. So after all this, which is for you? Most likely a combination of both, power building. And I can't like tell you your goals, right? It's if you've like wanted to be a bodybuilder and wanted to step on stage for a long time, of course, then you go and do that. But for the average person who is kind of undecided, I would recommend a power building style where essentially you go to the gym, maybe start with a compound like squat, bench, or deadlift, and then you can go and hit your accessory lifts and kind of do bodybuilding from there. That's what I did when I started lifting, and it was super fun, super enjoyable, and I'd recommend that. And if you actually want to step on a bodybuilding stage, you should know what you're getting into. Looking good on a bodybuilding stage as a natural takes years and years of training. If you've only been training for 2 years and you want to go on a bodybuilding stage, unless you have elite genetics, you're probably going to be disappointed with the way that you look, right? And I'm just being honest about bodybuilding. That's the reason I don't compete in bodybuilding, and I don't want to. I don't think it would be super rewarding for me personally, because I can look good at like 15% body fat. I don't need to be 6% body fat with a tan and all carved up on a stage just to look good. So I can only look you in the eye and recommend competitive bodybuilding if it's something that you're super passionate towards. Another thing, if you're looking to compete in something sooner rather than later, then powerlifting is definitely your best bet. And just to be clear, right, if we're talking bodybuilding with no intent to compete, I think that's perfect. I think that's great for a lot of people. The only part that kind of gets me iffy is when you're talking about competing, right? You have to be, if you're going to compete in bodybuilding, you got to be super dedicated, like hyper dedicated to that shit. So this is me editing right now, and looking back, I think I sound pretty harsh in bodybuilding, and I don't mean to come across this way. And for some people, maybe it is rewarding to actually go through the entire process and step on stage of a bodybuilding show. Just for me, it's not for me. So if it is for you, maybe it is for you, and that's great. But my problem is bodybuilding is about looking the best on stage, right? And the only reason I see to actually go out there, final product, and destroy your hormones, miss out on some muscle gain opportunity, probably lose some muscle, you might lose some muscle doing a bodybuilding prep, you're gonna fuck up your hormones. And I feel like the only reason to actually go through with that process is to win rather than, for yourself. It sounds kind of queer, but for yourself, right? You can do powerlifting and just do it for yourself and just be happy with your result. And the reason that I'm kind of being this harsh in bodybuilding is it's such a fucking tough prep to do just for yourself, right? But I didn't mean to come off super harsh on bodybuilding. Maybe if you have a different opinion, you can tell me. But I appreciate you for watching the video.